Hi guys, it's Katie. Today I'm going to make a sourdough bread. This is an oatmeal sourdough bread. I'm going to measure all my ingredients using my scale in grams like I normally do. I'll also be using cups. I got some comments, people were saying they would like to see that, so I'll put both measurements down in the description box. So I'm going to follow the same sort of method that I always do, and I'm going to measure out my flours and my water and soak them and feed my starter first thing this morning. And then once I have that, let it sit until this afternoon, and then I'll combine the starter and the flour, the soaked flour, and let that rise. And then before bed I'll shape it and put it in the fridge overnight, and then tomorrow we'll bake it. So I'm going to measure out all-purpose flour first, and I measure 400 grams. Alright, so now I'll just measure this with my cups to get how many cups this is. So that was 3 cups and 2 tablespoons of all-purpose flour. That's 200 grams of whole wheat flour, or 1.5 cups plus 2 tablespoons of whole wheat flour. 160 grams of ground oatmeal, or 1 2/3 cup of ground oatmeal. To the flour I'm going to add 495 grams of water, which is about 2 1/4 cups. I'm also going to add about 18 grams of salt. That's a level tablespoon. Go ahead and put that in. Okay, and I'll just set that aside for now. I'll mix it in just a second. Okay, I'm also going to feed my starter. This is where a scale comes in really in handy, because you just feed it equal weights of flour and water. If you're using cups, different flours have different weights, and they're all different weights than water. So you're going to have to do some, experimenting with that. But you want equal weights of flour and water. So for whole wheat flour, which is what I usually feed my starter, and using the 50-gram feeding that I usually do, it's 1/3 cup of starter and 1/4 cup of water. But if you're using different flours or you want to feed it a different amount, it would be a different sort of conversion. But it's not that critical that your starter stay exactly at 100% hydration. It's just sort of the standard that most recipes are written by, so it would make it easier. But you just want to stir together some extra flour and some extra water with your starter so it has some food to eat. And I like to keep my starter pretty thick like this, which is one of the reasons why I use whole wheat flour to feed my starter, so it tends to give a thicker starter even at 100% hydration, because the water kind of gets absorbed into the bran. So when you have a thicker starter like this, it's easier to see when it's ready, because the air bubbles are trapped, whereas in a thinner starter they kind of would rise up and pop at the surface. This will kind of show you when it's reached its peak activity, because all of the bubbles will be trapped and it will rise up. So I'll show you what it looks like before we go ahead and put it in the bread. And I fed this last night as well. I find that it's better if you feed it at least twice before you use it. I was feeding my starter just once and I was getting okay bread, but on the rare occasion that I would bake like 2 days in a row and my starter had stayed on the counter and had been fed more than once before I used it, I was getting awesome bread. So that's what I do now. Try to feed it the night before, and then the morning of I'm going to use it. So I have that mix. I'll just cover that and set it to a side. And now I need to mix up my flour, water, and salt. And this doesn't need to be mixed too much or kneaded or anything like that. You just want to get everything sort of incorporated. And this is a 65% hydration, so it's a little bit more water than I usually use. But the crumb will still be relatively closed, because the whole wheat flour and the oatmeal, they both kind of absorb the water because they're whole grains. If this was 65% hydration in all white flour, it would have a more open crumb. But closed crumb is what I'm going for sandwich bread, so that will work out fine. If you want a more open crumb, just add more water. The more water you add, the kind of more advanced it is to handle the dough, but it all comes with practice. So I'm slowly inching my way up to higher hydrations, because a lot of people think of the iconic sourdough as that sort of large irregular holes, and that's kind of the holy grail for a lot of people. But it just depends on what you're using the bread for, how you want it to turn out, and other characteristics of the bread. But I'll just go ahead and mix this. And like I said, it doesn't have to even come together as a dough. You just want to get most of those big pockets of flour moistened. So I'll go ahead and cover this and set it on the counter with the starter until this afternoon. Okay, so it's been about 5 hours. You can see my starter has lots of activity, so it's ready to go. I'm just going to go ahead and add that to my soaked flours. I usually add around 150 grams, which I'm guesstimating. I think it's around a half a cup, but I'll measure it out. So I'm going to stir this down a little bit just so I'm getting a full half a cup of starter and not a quarter cup of starter and a quarter cup of air bubbles. So put that in. Alright, that was 137 grams, so maybe a rounded half cup would be what I normally use, but 137 is fine too. So now this I would put in the refrigerator or feed it again if I'm going to bake again tomorrow or something. But this, I'm just going to combine the starter and the soaked flours. And I'll do that with a spoon, and then I'll probably move to my hand here in just a second. And soaking the flours means that like half of the work of kneading is already done. It's already coming together in a dough, and it's already has quite a bit of elasticity to it, and it's just so much easier for you know, a hands-off sort of step. So if you can remember to do that in the morning, it makes it so easy. All right. And I'll just knead it like this until it's really smooth. Okay, so that was just a few minutes of kneading. It already feels fine. It feels wonderful. So I'm just going to put this in a clean container and let it sit on the counter until this evening. So throughout the evening I did 2 sets of stretch and folds. Then before bed I went ahead and shaped it. I put it in a towel-lined bowl to rest in the refrigerator overnight. I put a little bit of rolled oats to keep it from sticking to the towel and give it a little decoration on the top of the loaf. And I put it in the refrigerator. Okay, so I just pulled this out of the refrigerator the next morning. It's actually nearly afternoon, but I'm gonna, it's looking kind of puffy, but I'm gonna let it sit here on the counter and do another little extra rising and warm up, and then I'll bake it. Okay, so here's the bread. I actually let it sit on the counter for several hours, probably about 4 or 5 hours, but it looks really puffy. I've been having a little bit of experimentation trying to let it get bigger and bigger. I've always been afraid of it sticking to the towel or like falling apart, so I usually throw it in the oven earlier than this, but we're gonna kind of test it. And I'm gonna use my Dutch oven. I have a lead on an inexpensive pan that you can use for bread if you don't have a big cast iron Dutch oven. But for today I'm going to use the Dutch oven. So that was 20 minutes at 500 covered, and then 30 minutes at 450 covered. And I think that's about all the darker I wanted. I'm not gonna put it in for any uncovered time. But it looks really good. I'll pull it out, let it cool, and then we'll slice it up. Okay, let's cut this bad boy open. So it looks like. It smells really good. Okay, I'm really happy with how this bread turned out. I hope you try the recipe. If you do, you can post pictures on my Facebook page. I'd love to see this recipe or any bread or recipes that you're making. I'd love to see what you're cooking in your kitchen. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you guys next time. Bye!